it! I'm HamsterBomb.
I'm Matt.
And this is Hitbox. This is the gaming show where we talk about all things video games and stuff that we're interested in, stuff that we just want to talk about, or hot button issues that are in the industry. And there's a whole lot of stuff that we could delve into. But for now, we kind of wanted to start with an episode dedicated to a series that we both very much keep near and dear to our hearts. Something we've been playing for, wow, a very long time. I don't know how many years has it been? We've been playing Monster Hunter.
I couldn't even tell you.
Dude, it's been a long time. At the very least, the two of us have been playing Monster Hunter together since the release of 3 Ultimate. And I even feel like that wasn't that long ago, just because I had gone back later and I had played the first game. I've played Freedom Unite, and then all the games, the English release ones, that have come out after 3 Ultimate. But I'd played Monster Hunter Tri was my first Monster Hunter game, and I kind of roped Matt into playing it with me. And by the way, before we move on and talk about like exactly the topic of this, what makes a good Monster Hunter game, I weirdly started with the Nintendo Wii controls. What did you think of those?
I didn't like them.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the Wii kind of bungles almost everything in terms of its control, except for like Wii Sports, but that's what it was made for, and it was designed for that. But yeah, man, Monster Hunter just didn't feel right with that. It was almost as clunky as going back to that first game, and the right analog stick was your attack, and you had to like flick the analog stick to like swing the swords and stuff in different directions. It was just, it was wonky and bad. And we're probably going to cover a lot of like what we think makes Monster Hunter good in some spots and what makes it kind of bad. Because when you're making a series, you got to keep in mind, like, you know, what is it that we got to save that's like core to what we are, and then what should we change, what should we cut, what should we fix, and what new things can we introduce that still make it the same thing. And this kind of goes up through all the way through its franchise and up through Monster Hunter Rise. And we want to talk about like what at least we enjoy out of new Monster Hunter games, and what we see in new ones that make us go, and kind of think twice before getting it, because I don't want to speak for you, Matt, but I assume the way you feel about Monster Hunter Rise is completely different about the way you felt about Monster Hunter Generations or Generations Ultimate when those games were in their pre-release stages and we were just looking at trailers. Is that true?
Definitely, especially after playing the demo.
Okay, well, that's good, and we'll talk about that as we go through it. And I've written down some bullet points I'm going to go through, and Matt has done as well. And we're gonna discuss these things that we think really define a good Monster Hunter game, because there's a lot of them, you know, and there's a lot of differences about all of them. And eventually, I'll cover them all in Playing with Myself episodes, and you know, we'll get the gist of like what makes each one tick, but. Still, when you combine them all together, we have this weird series that does kind of change drastically, but at the same time, not very much at all. And there's also like knockoff games that, I don't want to say knockoff, that's not really fair, but there's a lot of games that are in that same genre of that hunting, looting, crafting new stuff to fight bigger threats genre that Monster Hunter has kind of invented and done it in different ways. And I feel like they learn a lot from Monster Hunter, and I kind of wish Monster Hunter would sometimes learn from them, because there's a lot of interesting things you get from experimentation and trying new stuff. Even from their mainline stuff, I feel like there's a lot of, like, in Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, I think we can both agree, that game is amazing. Like,
yes.
That might still be, now Rise is not out, that might be the best Monster Hunter game you can play right now. It's that fantastic. And I don't even have to think about it that hard. And the others are great. But there are still a lot of problems with Monster Hunter World and Iceborne. I could go on, but and by problems I mean things that they could definitely fix for later, and I hope they do. But we'll see. We'll just go one thing at a time. So one thing I think really makes a good Monster Hunter game, the first thing I thought of was this game, if I'm making the next Monster Hunter game, right, it needs to have a real challenge to it. Like, you need to feel like you are overcoming some really tough monsters, or whatever they are. So if it's just a hunter looter, it's not Monster Hunter, but let's just say this one is a Monster Hunter game. We're gonna fight, you know, when I get to Rathalos or whatever the main big baddie is of the game, that needs to be hard. You know, I want to really feel like I had to prepare, I had to go back, or if I went in early with some gear that probably wasn't up to par, I should not win. I maybe skill based. If I was just really hammering it out and I was doing great, maybe I can win. But I don't really like it in a Monster Hunter game when I feel like I don't need to worry too much about what I'm wearing, the gear, crafting stuff, staying up on top of that, and I can just breeze through it. It kind of disappoints me when that happens, because I really love it when, Matt, there's a lot of missions that the two of us have gone on together in videos where, boy, we went on some hard quests. And you know what? When I think of my favorite moments in playing Monster Hunter, those are them. When it's extremely hard, when the odds are so stacked against you, and you come through and you win anyway. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, but adding on to that, I like for new players, the beginning isn't uber hard.
Yes, I agree.
They have
yeah.
like one or two monsters where it's like, okay, they don't really have any special status elements. They're just there like, hey, hit me a little bit, I'm gonna hit you. And the thing I really like about a good Monster Hunter game is when it's balanced between the ranks. So by the time you're at the end of low rank, you're feeling just about ready for high rank. But they're
you think you can do it, and then
you can do it.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is they're not throwing you into hot water immediately. They're like, okay, here's some low rank monsters you fought. They're gonna have a couple new moves, and they're gonna hit harder. So you kind of have that experience with that monster, but now you're going to the next level.
And you know, that's kind of another discussion that I actually didn't have on my list. This weird thing that Monster Hunter does, where to extend the length of the gameplay, they will do, you know, that thing where they'll make a whole new quote-unquote rank, where you fight the same monsters again, get different parts to craft better gear, better, you know, weapons and armor, but they have, you know, different moves. They deal, like, double, sometimes triple the damage that they did before, and they take a lot longer to kill. And it's really just so that, you know, that basically a power creep can keep going, and you're constantly like one step behind the monsters, because if you like go toe-to-toe with them, that's probably like that happy medium. Like, I want to say like some of the best of this is in Monster Hunter Iceborne, because that has the I swear, of any G rank I've ever played in Monster Hunter, that has like the slowest incline of difficulty I've ever played, and it was great because I always felt like I was not quite like overpowered at any point. Though one thing that was kind of a drawback to that, since that incline was so slow, I felt like I didn't really need to make new armor. So it kind of goes both ways, because if you make that too steep of a curve, say for example, back when I played Monster Hunter Tri for the first time, there's not a lot of monsters in that base game on the Wii, and you kind of have to make a new set of armor every few monsters or so if you're playing it casually. Though my brother, just as a joke, went through as far as he could in the main game just wearing the opening alloy armor. He actually got all the way up to Lagiacrus, by the way, and defeated him. That's ridiculous. But still, and especially with those controls.
Right, but to counterpoint that too, the nice thing is, like you said, you didn't really need to make new armor, but if you wanted to, there's nothing stopping you. Like,
Exactly.
say I really wanted to make like Lagiacrus armor. I can. It's a little bit challenging, but I can make it, and then I got a set that I can use. Versus, okay, I just want to stay in my comfort set, which is usually for me my safety is healing set.
Yeah, and high defense kind of thing. Or and weirdly, like I used to be all on defense when I would make builds in that game, and the farther I would play into it, I would turn more into all-out attack, because I would. Well, one, I mean, the more we play the game, we're better at knowing monsters' patterns, and we can dodge them a little bit better, take less damage overall. But when your attack is higher, the battle ends faster because you've killed them, and in this, it has less risk of you dying. So, I mean, it all kind of equates to the same thing in the end. You know, do you want to go attack? Do you want to go defense? But it's still a lot of fun trying to, like, strategize and figure that out. And I feel like if you don't have a tough battle, a real challenge, then there's really no fun in the customization. Say, like, there's a lot of fun, like, right when you get your butt handed to you in a Monster Hunter battle, and you're back at the base camp or whatever, or you're all the way back at the hub, or wherever you the main area in the game, and you're looking at that quest again, like, man, I want to try that again, but what do? I thought I was ready. You start looking through all your items, like, maybe I could swap this out and bring that instead. Maybe I should be eating for this. Maybe I should switch weapons. Maybe I should try this. That, I think, is perfect. That's the difficulty I want. where I can't just casually blast through it. Even if I am skilled at the game, I want to be able to stop, think about it, and kind of figure it out, because each monster is kind of a puzzle and needs to be solved. And I think that is a big strength of the game when it's done well.
It is, and like my favorite example for that, like as I was saying, like different ranks feel good as you keep going up, even if it's the same monster.
Mm-hmm.
It's like each rank they'll learn in 1 or 2 new moves just to kind of keep you on your toes. Like Rathian will, instead of doing the one tail flip, will do like the full tail spin.
Right, or intentionally fake you out, and they'll trick you into, say, like, you knew that Rathian was going to flip its tail right after a certain animation finished, right? But now it might intentionally, like, just stare at you for a second. Or I'm gonna jump ahead and talk about maybe like hyper monsters from Generations. I really don't like the hyper monsters too much, but one thing I loved that they did was they intentionally screwed with the timing of their attacks to mess with the player, just so that, like, you've dodged that Cianatar's big claw swipe 1,000 times, but not when it charges it slightly and then goes at you. So even if you've got the ability to adept dodge, or you know when to jump out of the way, you might have messed up the timing, and now you're getting hit because that's a slightly different version of it. And that's really cool, because it makes sure that, the player has to, figure out how do they overcome these new troubles and, problems that the same monsters are giving them.
Right,
which is kind of another thing, your tolerance of how many times the team reuses the same monsters, because a lot of people criticize subspecies when they were out in 3 Ultimate, and then later it seemed to, on paper, get lazier with Infected, which is the same thing, to Apex, which is, it's the same modeled monster, yet they behave a little differently, as opposed to, this is a totally different colored monster, it has maybe a new ailment, and then it went to Hyper, which is even less of a change than the Infection, and it's and then to Tempered in World, which is arguably even less than Hyper. So how do you feel about that incline of changing them up just so slightly? Does that feel cheap?
No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, say there's some monsters you don't want to fight. Like, say you do hate them that much, they appear in Regeneration. Lagumbi.
Lagumbi. Like, hey, he was out of Iceborne. I was happy.
Yeah, but here's the nice thing about Monster Hunter. Technically, unless it's a key quest, I don't have to fight them.
Most of the time, yeah. If it's not a key quest, you don't have to. Now, I'm a completionist, so I fight them all, so yes.
Right. But even if I do,
that's my choice.
I only have to fight that quest one time.
Right.
So, like, say I really don't like Jade Barrier. Or Jade Barrett.
Jade Barrett, yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I'll only fight them once and then never go back. So it's really, for me, not a cheap thing, because they get new subspecies, get new moves.
Mm-hmm.
They still hold that familiar ground, but they give you a little bit of variation with the monsters.
Which is really cool. Yeah, I do appreciate that. Because,
I mean, if people really wanted to complain about that, you could say the same thing about Rathian and Rathlums. They're the same thing, one just has a little bit different of a moveset.
Yeah, and it part of it is there to make sure that there's more creatures in that pool of making a difficulty curve. Because if you have less monsters, by obviously dividing it by about half, right, by taking out the Tempered, for example, then you kind of cut your difficulty curve's smoothness in half. And a smooth difficulty curve is very good. So, say, like, you played all the way through, you get to the end game final boss of Iceborne, we're not going to spoil stuff, and you beat them, and then you start fighting all the Tempered monsters, but you can kind of start from the beginning again. So it's kind of like, you hit the end of high rank, and now you get G rank, and you can kind of start over. So I think people do really like that, and honestly, I do like that too. Because it just extends my game. I get to play new stuff, get to hunt more monsters, and that's always fun. But I always want to make sure that, to round this out to that thing I was saying, I want to make sure there's still a real challenge to it.
And to help transition to what I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
For that help transition and challenge is, there are certain games that I love this. There's only 2 games where I don't like this. It's your NPC players, your Palicos or your Kiambas and Cha-Chas.
Yes.
That can also help you plan for a hunt and everything. Like with Cha-Cha and Kiamba, you'd have to pick out, okay, what mask do I want? Do I want ones that make trap? Do I want the one that distracts the
Do
monster?
I want the one that like shields all the time? Do I want the one that's attack based? Yeah.
Yeah,
I really liked that back then.
And that's what I liked about World 2, because they did it really well in World 2. If you're Palico, like, okay, here's all the different gadgets, you can give him whatever armor and weapon you want, but now he can do all these extra things for you, whether you want him to be your healer or your trap player or your stealer.
Which also levels up similarly to how Chacha and Kiamba's masks would level up.
Exactly. The only one I didn't really like was For You. They didn't really have anything. It was just your Palico, and that was kind of it.
Yeah,
can you think of anything really
honestly
customizable you could do for You? Because I love For You. For You is probably my favorite game.
I mean, outside of giving them different armor, which was new at the time. I mean, like Chacha and Kiamba, you couldn't craft them armor. So being able to craft your companion armor and a weapon, you're giving them an element. You're giving them different defenses. So it was interesting, but at the same time, I definitely agree with you. Giving them a gadget in World is miles better. It's like combining the best of both worlds, because you get to give them the armor, feel like you're preparing them, and you get to give them that little gadget. The same kind of problem from 4 kind of carries over to Generations, where you have the same issue where your cat doesn't really have like a lot of customizability. I mean, like on paper they do, but when it comes down to battle, it really doesn't feel like it. You did get to play as them, and they did add a lot of stuff so that they can be playable, which is interesting. I wasn't really a big fan of playing as the cat, so I didn't really care to see it go later on, but it could come back and I could see it. But the real big problem with that was you had like an army of Palicos, and that made them just feel like they were all the same. And that might be because I named them all Pepe. But
it's not just that. It was so convoluted.
Yeah.
They made it way too convoluted, which is why I was glad to see it gone in Generations. It left
right, and you just have this one Palico in World, and that's great.
You have different cats with different stats. You have to worry about leveling up. Okay, who's my strongest healer? What's the difference between these two cats? It's like Capcom does this thing where if they add a feature and they go overboard, they kind of fix it by getting rid of it.
Yeah, they either get rid of it or they find a great way to implement it better. And
like Clutch Claw and whatever the string bug's going to be. They
the Wirebug,
yeah, they feel like they work the same thing. So I'm okay with that. It's just
the Wirebug is definitely a new Clutch Claw, though. Maybe we'll talk about that later. I am not a big fan of the Wirebug. We've both played the demo of Rise, though. How about we shelve that one? Because I have that definitely coming back later.
Yeah, but it was just the fact of, like, Generations, I wasn't a fan of your partner at that point, because it was way too complicated.
Right. So, that is fair.
They
and overcomplication. Just left
it as playing as the cat, and that's it.
Right. And you know what? I'm going to try and take that into a weird a segue, where, because we were kind of talking about Generations. The next thing I wanted to talk about that I think makes a really good Monster Hunter story, or I'm sorry, a Monster Hunter game, I spoiled it, is having a non-invasive story. And boy, does the Generations, air quotes, story, which is oddly like one of the most non-existent story. Like, technically, like, I could ask you right now, what was the story of Generations, what you played? And you'd probably be like, I have no idea, nothing happened. But
yeah, I have zero idea.
But the thing is, I think there was the most amount of story-driven text in that Monster Hunter game compared to the others, and that's what I mean by invasive story. It's like, it doesn't matter to me almost like what happens. I just want to make sure that if it happens, it's interesting enough to like drive me to keep playing in the gameplay, because I want to say 4 Ultimate might have done this the best, where and it might have something to do with, like, as you play through the story, you actually go to new areas, new technical hunter hub areas, and it's kind of like alluding to, like, oh, we were traveling through here, and oh, we gotta help the people in this area. They have this monster that's blocking this thing. And, you know, it really doesn't matter. Like, in the end, like, it's not a thought-provoking story, but it's just enough to make me go like, oh, but what's gonna happen next? What happens when we do set sail and we try to get to this area, but we think that the Gormagal is out there or something, or we're gonna try and track this thing down? And, you know, it's just enough to keep you going. But say, for example, Generations, you do not have that, and instead it's more just, you know, fight this monster, I need it for this reason, and it's just a tip. I don't know. It seems very, very contrived, and it's just, you know, you get your missions just because it's a Monster Hunter game, and sometimes they're just trying to make jokes. Sometimes they just go on and on and on text-wise, and I don't know. I feel like something was inherently lost when they tried to do that instead of like I don't feel like the story needs to be written first. You know, that's definitely not it. It needs to be like a gameplay first. Gameplay's gotta work, but you gotta intertwine a story into it. And World, I'm gonna say Base World does this a little bit better than Iceborne. But like Base World, try and come up with like some sort of story and narrative to like why I need to go and do these things, and that's all I need. I just need the why, tell it short, snappy, and like, give me a little bit of mystery. Because Monster Hunter's really great with mystery. And you do that, I'm in.
Yeah, like sometimes like one of the things I love with World/Iceborne is like you'll be in the middle of a cutscene and it'll immediately just flow into the fight. Like you're going to be thrown in immediately.
I think 4 Ultimate was the one that did that first. Well, for us in the West. And whoa, that was so awesome. I loved that. You really felt like you were the one in there doing it. And it was a 3DS. Like, talk about trying to get immersion on that tiny screen in a portable system. That's amazing.
Well, that's why, like, one of my favorite scenes in World/Iceborne is at the end of World where you fight the final boss, the real final boss.
Yes.
Like, the cutscene of, like, you know it's just going to be this giant elder and it's just you.
Yeah. Like,
you are going in there by yourself. With no backup.
Yeah, and people literally, your backup literally running away. Yeah, I mean, that is great.
That makes it feels like a challenge. Like, okay, I need to do this. I need to hunt this monster and take it down.
And that kind of goes back to my first point. And you know, I was discussing these briefly with Kim, and she pointed out one thing to talk about the story that I didn't think of, and that is the inclusion of voice acting. It was never a thing pre-World. Outside of grunts, but as soon as we got to World, I don't have a problem with it at all. In fact, I like it. I mean, I feel like some characters are just not written that well. That is just a different problem altogether. Now that it's voice, you know, you have to listen to it. You can't just mash A and get through the text and you get to the gameplay. So it's there. It's going to be absorbed. And the thing about voice acting in a game, all of a sudden, I feel like I need to start paying attention to it because it's going to try and deliver a good story. World, spoiler alert, it's not a great story. It's about on par with the rest of the Monster Hunter stuff, maybe 4 at best. Well, it's just okay.
I will go ahead and go out on a limb and say Monster Hunter has never had like an, oh my god, amazing story.
Or, you know, I will even go so far as to say I don't think Monster Hunter has ever even had an oh my god, amazing story moment. There's a lot of oh my god, amazing monster fights. And surprising monster fights, but nothing story-wise that really did that to me. Maybe at best would have happened in World, I'm sorry, in 4 Ultimate when, like, they surprise you and throw you into a fight you were not expecting, like with the early fight with the Apex Seregios, and you're in high rank. Like, that just threw me off. But that wasn't really the story doing that.
Yeah, but I will disagree with you on one fact.
Mm-hmm.
Just all the cutscenes involving Fatalis and Iceborne. Those were all amazing. Like
they were. I'm not saying they're not. There's a lot that World does great. But
and that's why I kind of got upset when Rise came out there and people were like, "Oh, the hunters can talk now." I'm like, well, kind of not really. It's more so that you can use emotes, kind of like the sticker system.
I don't. Well, here,
also,
the fact that they talk like anime fighters while they're attacking, like. Oh god, I'm going to attack it. You can't stop me. And that kind of stuff just keeps going and going while you're playing. And maybe that was the demo and it was cranked up to 11, but good lord, it was driving me insane. I think there was an option to turn it off, and
yeah, there is.
Yeah, I believe there was, but for the sake of trying the demo, I believe I left it on just so that the cringe level was there. And honestly, like, maybe that's something that Japan really likes, but boy,
well, it's not just that.
Yeah,
it's the fact that you didn't get to choose the voice either.
Yeah,
so like
maybe
you had a chance of running into the voices that you hated, like for me, since I usually do the female armor set, like
Right.
I see players with like the really high pitched voice. I'm like, oh my god,
High-pitched,
that's so annoying.
squeaky voices.
I hate that. It's
Yeah.
like, just give them a normal voice.
To be fair, though, and I know I'm about to compare it to a different game, but in God Eater, I do get to choose my voice, and I spend a lot of time like going through those, making sure that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get irritated with this character. And then I'll get into fights, and it's the fact that they say the same things over and over again that drives me crazy. Like, every time I take a potion, it's one of two lines, and I have to hear it. And you're going to be taking potions in Monster Hunter hundreds of times, maybe thousands, based on how long you play it. And how many times are you going to get hit with by a monster? How many times are you going to deal a critical hit or damage or cut a tail off?
Well, that's why I'm also curious to see how many we get. Because that'll be on Capcom too. If they give us a pretty wide bank, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, maybe. But I definitely appreciate the fact that they let us turn it off. That's something that was driving my chat crazy, and of course me as well. But I just thought it was funny, like cringy funny. But it's definitely not something I would want for my 600-hour playthrough of Monster Hunter, for sure.
Right, but that's also what's great about Monster Hunter and Capcom doing it, is they give you the option.
Yeah, I'm glad they gave us that option. That's true.
So
yeah,
I like that Monster Hunter had the foresight to go, maybe some people won't want to play with this song.
Right, because in God Eater, you have the option to turn off that banter, but only of the other characters, not your own. So I know, it's so irritating. Oh god, but anyway, yeah, like I feel like voice acting can be done really well in a Monster Hunter game, and just because it's there does not make it a bad Monster Hunter game. That was my main point. We have come full circle.
World was the first one. It's like, this is a brand new frontier kind of.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's see where they can go. They'll make adjustments as they keep going.
Yeah, and this is a new thing they're trying, because they're like, hey, we got voices. Why don't we try this? Let's not have the hunters be this quiet Link-like character that can only go because let's be honest, that's weird.
Well, I'll be honest. That's why I'm not a big fan of Link. Like, I get he's supposed to be quiet, so you can put your own voice personality.
He's supposed to be relatable, yeah.
He's just creepy. Like, and all the Breath of the Wild scenes where it's really like emotional with Zelda and everything, he's just not saying anything. It's really freaking creepy.
I wouldn't say Breath of the Wild as much as I would say like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. Bits where there's
Twilight Princess is so much worse.
Where there's so many scenes where like Link should say something, or if he does say something, it just pans to black and then comes back in. Maybe a discussion for another time about Legend of Zelda stuff, but yeah, that is odd. Do you have another?
Why is Link boring?
Oh, I would not say he's boring. I know. Yeah, I know. So anyway, what do you got for your next point?
Multiplayer.
Multiplayer.
I like the multiplayer, and let me talk about it for some things. Like I like Worlds multiplayer, where I can go in the hub. And there's tons of people where I can join a quest, or sometimes I've had a lot of times where people will join my quest and we form a really good team and we just stick together the rest of the night and do a bunch of quests. And I like that in Monster Hunter because it feels more like, okay, I've done pretty much everything I could do, but maybe someone needs help with a quest, or like, oh, I need to try and farm this rare, but it takes too long to do by myself.
It's like community.
Yeah, it feels like a really fun community to be part of.
At times. Now, I know sometimes there can be certain people who play certain particular weapons, you know who you are, and kind of ruin hunts for other people. But
the nice thing is, like, in World, I can just say, okay, I don't want to be in this hub with you anymore, bye, go and do a new one.
Yeah, and that's fine. And, I really like how I can start streaming, and, I can have, especially in World, you can have a hub of 16 people. Isn't it 16? That's great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's so helpful and nice that like I can swap people out. I feel like that was made on purpose just so that more people could do streams like that, and it's not so complicated trying to like cycle people out, and that was always difficult for me.
That was hard for you because it's like, okay, here's the hall code, okay, we're gonna kick people out, these people can come in.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to say is a kind of a downside. I don't want to like be the devil's advocate for your points, but just to keep this conversation, there's some serious problems with the history of Monster Hunter's multiplayer connection dropping, and how they decide to fix it. Because how come I could be wrong, that you still cannot jump back in to a quest that you have dropped from? That drives me nuts. Now, in the past games, I kind of got it. I mean, like, it was probably a little much at the time, and it would take too long for you to get back in, and by the time you had finally gotten the other person back in, if it were possible, it probably wouldn't be worth it, and you should start over. But there was nothing more devastating back in, like, 4 Ultimate, when we got, like, super far with, like, an Apex Devil Joe hunt, and the connection drops, and you're sitting right next to me. It's local player, and it still drops.
But once again, I don't know if that's Monster Hunter or just the hardware.
I don't know.
I mean, I played other DS games where we would connect, and it just couldn't do it. Now, it's better on a console because I'm hardwired.
Right.
Like, I think I've only dropped once or twice, and I mean, any server can do that. But
that's true.
I have had it where I've dropped and I've joined Craig's Quest a couple times. But I mean, I don't know. It's a weird one.
It is, yeah. So it's something that, like, especially, I really wish that I could rejoin one that I dropped from. Or, like, here. Because, for example, I host one, say I'm streaming, and I go with a hunt group of 3. I'm sorry, group of 4, and we go to fight, like, a Fatalis. Big, difficult endgame monster, and immediately one person drops. Well, the monster is still, in that state where it was, like, preparing for a 4-hunter mission. And say the second person drops because something happens to them, or like they had to leave. And now I'm hunting with 2 people in what's still a multiplayer 4-player powered up Fatalis. We're screwed. Like it's done.
I think World auto balances.
It does auto. I know it auto balances when you add players. I don't know about when you subtract them, because a monster might suddenly be killed by the algorithm subtracting of it. But either way, I'm not positive, but still, it always feels like right when that happens, we're like, okay, we should just quit. We'll go back. We'll let you guys give it a minute so you can re-add. When the solution should just be, okay, we'll keep fighting. We can hold our own. You get your butt back in here, and they can rejoin. Maybe if it's like that was their spot or something, and an SOS flare was not fired, they should have the ability to rejoin. That does kind of bother me, but still.
Right, but the nice thing, like we keep saying, the nice thing is it looks like every time something like that is brought up, Monster Hunter tries to fix it a bit.
Yeah, that's true. So speaking of stuff that I think they add and try to fix, is my next point. I really love it when Monster Hunter has a large variety of different accessible weapons and armor, but they don't add them or like give them to you in I don't want to say like an incrementing, like kind of like a difficulty curve, but just a curve where they're slowly getting better and they don't suddenly jump to being too OP. Because I think we've all kind of played where suddenly we see like this one set, we're like, whoa, I need that. And it's you get it and you throw all the armor spheres into it, and it's miles better than what you had before, and even miles better than maybe a comparable set that you could be making of another monster of, say, like the same level tier. And that's always a little uncomfortable, and I know they want to buff particular sets for monsters that maybe, like, I don't know, the main endgame one versus another monster that seems to be at the same tier. But I think Iceborne does a great job of this. It might be a little too incremental of the changes. They're marginal at best, but there's some of the older ones where you had to make a new set every other time, and I feel like especially with the first game, gosh, that first game is so hard. You just have to stay on top of it and constantly make new stuff, because the changes from one monster to the next is too great, and you must keep crafting.
Well, the thing is too, the nice thing about Iceborne is like it depends on your playstyle too. Like you said, in Iceborne, you tend to go for attack sets like the Rajang set. I despise the Rajang set. I hate the attack sets. I am a defense, let me heal my party kind of player.
Yeah, in a team setting, that is great. But also,
well, even in a solo setting, I like having speed eating 3 health up plus, so that way I can just pop a potion, keep going.
That's true. But what I was gonna say was I also really love playing Monster Hunter solo, and I didn't really mention this in here. I probably should have when we did the multiplayer section. But I really like it when I can play through the entire game by myself. I just want to know that it's possible, even if it's harder.
I think the only game that you really couldn't was Generations, right?
You can in Generations. It's just a pain in the neck. I think the only one that you really can't, for the casual player, is World.
Why? I did world pretty much solo.
Base game world, yes, and main story Iceborne, yes. It's the extra stuff that they added that you really can't. Behemoth, you can't. The Elytrium fight,
events.
You can't.
They were meant to focus on.
I got that, but even the special events in 4 Ultimate and 3 Ultimate, though difficult, you could do them. It's not like they decided we're not going to scale this monster for single player to force me to go into a group to defeat it. I don't really like that. I don't really understand why.
Because, I mean, you gotta remember...
Could be the aggro mechanic.
Well, it's not just that. Monster Hunter was created to be an online multiplayer game.
And it was. The whole point of it was, yes.
So I think they really want to hold on to that, form a party, form a team, and go hunting aspect. I don't think it's so much of, screw the single player. It's more of, this is what the game was meant to be, so we really kind of want to hold on to that spirit. So that way it's a game you play with your friends. And
though
not just solo through.
I understand. Though I do agree with that mentality. Since Monster Hunter now on modern systems requires a paid service through that system in order to play online, there's some players who are just not able to play online. Maybe they don't have a good enough internet connection and they just can't do it. And now they're locked out of continuing and beating the certain monster. They just can't play them. Imagine you were in that situation, and I know Elytrium is one of your favorite, if not your favorite monster. Imagine you just could not play him.
Well, it's one of those things, like, for how late Elytrium is in the game, if you can't figure out how to get better to beat a monster, that's your own fault.
I don't know about Elytrium, though.
Why? Once I figured him out, I soloed him with a bow.
Well, I think that might have been after his nerfs, but
no, that was before his nerfs.
What? You did?
Yeah.
Did you film that?
No.
Dude, you should have.
Once you figure him out, he's not too hard. Like, I mean, yeah, his threshold needed to be lowered. That's for dang sure. I had to make a full-on Dragon's Den, but
that threshold was ridiculous.
It made me think, okay, what do I need to go after him? I can't just go in guns blazing. I need to think. So I built a Blight Res, Heal, and Dragon Element boosted set.
Okay, you caught me with my pants down there. You gave me with my own point, so I will give you that. That's fine.
Now, I will say, like, certain quests, like I would have a different opinion if it stopped you from the story, like Behemoth. Like, say you couldn't beat the rest of the game unless you beat Behemoth.
You know, one thing that you are punished with for not beating Behemoth is if you attempt Behemoth, you will not listen to any other music in Astera outside of that Final Fantasy theme, and it is very loud. It's cool the first time. It's like, oh, that's neat, but then it always plays until you defeat Behemoth, which if you are not able to defeat Behemoth, which I don't think I had internet for a while, like the PS Plus account on my PlayStation for a while, and I was just forced to listen to that, and it, honest to God, stopped me from playing Monster Hunter for a good while.
Oh yeah, and the other thing too is the internet thing is more, I blame Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah,
they're the ones who are making it. You have to pay to play online. Like, that's why I was so upset when Nintendo did it. Yeah, Nintendo's is cheaper, but still, I'm like, you're the one game company that has stayed a game company, and now you're kind of milking it.
You know, I kind of feel like that is a whole discussion that we could dig into of, like, the perks of different systems doing their online. So before we go down that rabbit hole, Matt, what's your next point for what do you think makes a good Monster Hunter game?
This one it's completely irrelevant to the game. Like, you can make the game and it does not need it, but it just adds that extra little spice to it that I like. I love the collabs.
Oh, yeah, those...
I love, like, when it was on Nintendo, you had, like... man,
those Nintendo ones.
And the Samus one, and then for
I
World,
love the Metroid.
Geralt, we had...
Oh, the Witcher!
Resident Evil.
Yes, the Resident Evil came out of nowhere, too. Yeah, that was also cool.
And that's what I like about Monster Hunter sometimes, because it's like, yeah, it's this fantasy world where you get to make armor, but at the same time...
Street Fighter! Mega Man! Yeah.
you can dress your cat up as a 3D Mega Man and go have fun.
Or the crazy ones we did in, I think it was Generations, where you were, like, the creepy Toon Link with the cat ears and Fox McCloud's body.
It's like, see, that also is Monster Hunter for me. Yeah, it's sometimes grounded in realism, but if I want to run around as Leon from Resident Evil with a giant heavy bow gun.
I love the new layered armor idea, so I can run around with a rainbow glowing cat head and no clothes.
Yep.
in my underwear. That is so fun.
So like I said, it really doesn't matter to the gameplay. It's just something I love.
So maybe just like, collabs in just that silly charm to it, just kind of break up the serious difficulty grind of the game. Because the original games, a lot of people compared them to Dark Souls in how difficult they were, and you were kind of ramming your head against this impossible boss, and trying to figure out how are you going to beat it. And it has gotten a lot easier over time. Yes, we have gotten better at the game, but Monster Hunter
it's definitely gotten easier.
Yeah, the games are definitely getting easier.
But I kind of like that too, because it's kind of opening it up a little bit.
A lot of more people get to play Monster Hunter and enjoy it now.
Difficulty, but it doesn't have the Dark Souls charm.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just one thing I like. I like the collabs.
Okay, so the next thing I have here is I really like Monster Hunter that has like a fair yet a various item rarity drop rate. And I know this sounds kind of weird, but maybe there needs to be like some sort of a pity system to where like if you are fighting something over and over again and you need to get its mantle, you need that plate, and you fought it 30 times. Come on, like maybe increase like the rarest item by like 0.5% each time you do it until you get it, and then drop it back down. Because
can I counter that?
Go ahead.
I think they fixed that a lot when they made the prints that you could convert to the rare items.
I do really like the idea of the prints, though I was gonna say
I still wish we had item trading.
Yeah, item trading like for the same level. Yes,
Yep.
That would be outstanding if they would allow players to do that. But the thing is, there was something very different about the old games. I don't know about you, Matt, but I remember needing to grind at least twice as much in the 3DS games versus on the PlayStation or the.
Heck.
Yeah. So, and that's not just because of the tickets where you can redeem them for monster parts that you could use. It's the fact that like I feel like the game is just dropping the rares more often. Maybe I'm getting more chances at them. Maybe it is a higher percentage, because I don't think it is. I've looked at the numbers. So I don't know what it is, but I really feel like they are giving me, they're giving me more stuff. In terms of the first game, they definitely are. You were lucky if you got 3 monster parts out of 1 mission. God, it was so hard. But I feel like it's not like that anymore, and you're kind of getting flooded with stuff, so you don't really have to, especially in Generations Ultimate. It's almost like you fight something one time, and you could practically make, like, whatever weapon you wanted, maybe even, like, half of an armor set from one fight.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do think you're right where they made it easier. Or not easier, just, like, instead of it being, like, less than a 1% chance, it's just a 1% chance kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there were some times where we'd go hunting, and you're right, it's just like, I just need this one part. I just need this one part.
I know, and gosh, I remember so many times when we were playing offline, just like, oh man, I need this part, please. And you would keep getting it, and you don't need it, but you needed some other part that I keep getting, and we can't trade. Maybe that was the big issue.
That's where the desire sensor came in. I still think there was a desire.
The game knows what you want, and it just doesn't want to give it to you. The more that was it. Like, the more you look at it in the items, or look at your armor, like, don't look at it. The game's gonna know what you want.
Exactly. You never look at it. You look it up online.
So what else did you have on here?
Let's see. What do I got? I have the musical score.
Yeah, Monster Hunter's got outstanding music.
Well, it has the 2 perfect types of music. The kind that plays in the background and you can drown it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Proof of the Hero of, okay, stuff's getting awesome, let's go.
Yes, Proof of a Hero is so good. And we got kind of lucky. That was an original track from the first game. I kind of feel like Rathalos got stuck with a theme that wasn't very interesting, though they have remixed it and kind of made it really good later on. A lot of the good... Man, Monster Hunter's got so much good music. Though lately, I feel like some of the more recent, like, flagship monster tracks, I didn't care very much for. Like, Velkhana's is kind of dopey sounding to me. I wasn't really a fan of it. And, like, Nergigante is just okay at times. Yeah, he's got a later fight one that's really cool, but... yeah, it's something, I don't know, maybe it was just my, of course it's just going to be my preference of which themes I liked more than other ones, but yeah, for the most part, Monster Hunter has outstanding music, and that would make a great Monster Hunter game. I agree. It needs to have some great music. Another thing, this is kind of weird, I don't know how to work this in. I feel like a good Monster Hunter game, I know I get hate for this all the time, I feel like it needs to be just realistic enough, with like an aesthetic theme of the world that you're playing in, to where I can suspend my disbelief and still kind of pretend that this is like, you know, real cavemen people, very strong, superhuman, almost like cavemen people, fighting off these fantasy monsters that are attacking their villages. You know, it's just something in a video game that as soon as you shatter the immersion, and you show me some radically different thing that's not like anything else in it, and it's so over the top anime that I kind of take a step back and I kind of lose something when I'm playing it. It's not as enthralling, it's not as exciting anymore. It doesn't captivate me nearly as well. And that's something I feel like definitely Generations did with its what are those, weapon arts and styles and all that. It just felt like it wasn't Monster Hunter, or even if it was, it just took it in a direction I didn't really like.
Right, but here's the nice thing, and I love this about Monster Hunter. They seem to have like two different types. Ones that are more grounded, which are more the console based, and ones that are more fantasy style, which are like the online based. Because if you look at like Frontier, they got all kinds of crazy fantasy
Frontier
monsters.
Is a mess, yeah.
But it's nice because it's like, okay, if I want to play Monster Hunter, but I want the creatures to be a little bit more crazy and more fantasy style, I can go play Frontier. Or if I wanted to be more grounded, I'll go play World. Or if I want a nice in between, I'll go play For You.
So what would you say Rise is?
Rise, I honestly am thinking it's a hybrid.
I was kind of thinking that too,
because
because
really like a hybrid, because there's some things in there fantasy, but it doesn't feel like super anime-y, kind of.
Yeah,
it's like the threat is real. Like I like it's not, oh, these monsters are spirits. It's like, no, they're on a rampage. They're coming to destroy the village. You need to get ready.
Right. Also, I feel like the new designs for the new monsters seem to be in that world aesthetic of kind of realistic just enough, you know, like have an excuse for why this thing shoots poison. Don't just make it shoot poison. You know, it's got poison glands and it swells up this, like Puke Puke, it swells up this this stuff in its tail and it can spray it everywhere. You know, like design it in a way that it makes sense. That's all I ask. I just don't want it to be like just it has Dragon Blight. Why? I don't know, because that it's strong now. It has Dragon Blight. You know, that I never really cared as much for.
Loving a lot of the new monsters coming out of Rise so far that I've seen. Because like the new, do you think he's going to be an Elder Dragon, the new cover monster? Do you think he's Elder Dragon?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But anyway,
yeah, he looks like a Fang Wyvern to me.
Yeah, but the nice thing I like about him is, yeah, he has that like mystical Japanese style look to him, but he still looks like the way Zenogre will fight, where he is just a beast and he will come wreck you. He's not going to magically teleport or anything like that. He's going to freaking beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, I hope so. The only thing that I think really separates Rise that we haven't talked about is that Wirebug. And I know I would bring it back up. I just feel like the Wirebug... Okay, design-wise, I feel like they were just trying to make an excuse for the Clutch Claw to work in three-dimensional space if you shot it and missed. And what would happen? Like, how do we get the hunter to jump? It could just be that. Like, maybe we just want the hunter to jump because we're going to do a ninja theme this time. How do we get them to jump? I really like that they went above and beyond to try and figure out how they're going to do that with realistic stuff like insects and silk. The thing is, I just can't buy it, you know? It's just so anime for me to see this glowing bug constantly shooting out and is strong enough to somehow fly in place and yank you forward. I don't know, and it's doing so... to me, it seems like in the new weapon attacks with it seem very reminiscent of arts and styles from Generations that kind of turn me off because it is a little unfitting of the world, but I got a feeling since it is kind of a hybrid, the whole world is kind of a hybrid, I will probably just get used to it, and it probably will grow on me. But just
the nice thing is,
first impressions, though, yeah.
I like that they tried to make it fit in the real world. Where like, okay, we could have just made it, if they really wanted to, they could have just been, oh, it's spiritual energy, which is what I was afraid it was.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's some kind of mystic energy or chi or something. They're like, no, it's a bug. You got to find it in the wild because you only get about 2 shots.
Right.
So it's like I'll give it credit. I'm willing. That's why I'm much more willing to try it versus Generations Hunter styles, because those were just nuts.
That's just anime.
Yeah. That one is just anime. At least with the Wirebug, it's more. For me, it's just okay. It's Clutch Claw 2.0.
It is, yes. And I think we all can agree that's just the new Clutch Claw, which is good. I've only played what you saw me play on my YouTube channel. Matt, I think you've played a lot more of the demo than me, so you've probably gotten a lot more used to it. So
I've re-downloaded. I figured out. Did you know? Sorry, you probably knew this. How you can get your hunts back?
Yes, I knew that.
Save data.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing it a lot.
Yeah.
But it's more so like, okay, I want to go see. I want to feel how the weapons are.
Yeah, right. And I did the same. I tried a bunch of different weapons.
And I'm glad it's running on the World Engine too, because it feels good on the World Engine.
It does. It also looks really nice in it too. So, do you have anything left? Because I've got one more point I want to share. If you have anything.
Go ahead and do your point. I got one more, and then you might cover it.
Okay, we'll see. But anyway, the last thing I wanted to talk about was I feel like a good Monster Hunter game needs to introduce just enough new ideas to feel like it's refreshing and kind of new take on the old stuff, but also fixing some old problems and limitations that we had before. And this is kind of what we're talking about with the Wirebugs. The Clutch Claw, and why I was wary with the Wirebug was the Clutch Claw was so OP, it was practically mandatory to beat certain monsters. If otherwise you are down thousands of damage per minute or so. And that just doesn't feel right. You know, it's almost like the game developers are kind of forcing me to try this new thing because they made the new thing and they don't want it to be underpowered. Because that's, you know, as a game developer, that's probably your worst fear. You know, you develop some new thing and it becomes just a joke because it's underpowered. And then even if you balance it for the next game, people still don't want to use it because it's just not strong enough. And I get that, that's bad. But doing it like this where you overpower something, it just makes me worried. Like back in 3 Ultimate, I remember long swords and switch axes being new were really good. And then in 4 Ultimate, the insect glaive and charge blade, really good. And then they kind of, you know, balanced everything out as soon as they moved on from there. But still, I feel like what they should have done, say for example, when underwater fighting was clunky and weird in 3 Ultimate, instead of fixing that problem, they just kind of axed it. I would have rather have gotten some fixed water fighting. Maybe they're still developing it and they're trying to get it to work, but that's one thing, like, I don't want to see them give up on something, especially when there were specific monsters designed for underwater fighting or integrating with it, like Yakris, that I feel like we're just not going to see traditionally again until we get that mechanic back. And
but I will say that I'm probably gonna get flack for this. I'm blaming the fan base for the underwater fights.
You know, I do understand that too.
They pulled Other M.
They pulled a Metroid Other M where they complained so much they destroyed their own, the thing that they loved, and now it's not coming back ever.
Yep. So it's like I can't. I don't know.
I
can't feel bad. I feel bad because it's like underwater fighting was fun, but
Cedius was so cool, man.
Because I mean, like it just depended on the weapon. Like Great Sword underwater worked fine.
Yeah, dual blades were a little awkward. You had to be right on top of them. But yeah, the ranged stuff and stuff that reached really far, it worked. It was fine once you got used to it.
It's just one of those, like, you had to get used to it. It was a new thing to learn. And of course there's going to be new things that they're going to have to iron out. It's not going to be perfect when it comes out of the oven.
Right.
But fans were so nasty about it. They're like, okay, well, I guess we'll just drop this idea. That's why I was so scared that I wouldn't get Charge Blade in the next Monster Hunter game.
That's true.
Because it was so overpowered and people were complaining about it online. I'm like, please just let me have this.
Right. And I really loved the Insect Glaive too. And I'm glad that they managed to fix it in ways that it's not as overpowered anymore, but also give it new mobility and make it feel like it is more unique. And probably the Insect Glaive is the best example of how they did this right. I hope that Wirebug is them doing the same for the Clutch Claw. We need the full game in order to know that. But I really think that makes a great Monster Hunter game too. So if anything, so far we've described Rise is looking to be one of the best Monster Hunter games.
I'm excited for it. Like, I took the day off work for it.
Really?
me and my girlfriend are just going to sit over here and play Monster Hunter for it.
That's going to be a fun day. So did you have one more thing?
I do, but it's a slight complaint, slight not.
Okay.
And this will be the last thing I got.
Okay.
I love the lore of Monster Hunter, but they make it so hard to find anything about it.
You know what? That is so funny you say that, because in my notes for potential episode topics, I actually have it coming down as a a beginner's guide to Monster Hunter lore, and mostly where to start. Where is all of this lore? And like, how do people find out all of this stuff? And then give me some interesting stories. And I wanted to make a whole episode on that, and fortunately, I know a guy, and he's our video editor.
Because it's like, how many times have you and I been excited? Like, there's been, I think, 2 or 3 times where we thought we were going to get the ultimate dragon weapon.
Oh, yeah.
And it turned out to be something else. We're like, oh, I want to know more about this thing.
Right, I know. That is a thing, and it's very weird. So, you know, one thing that, weirdly, I'm going to give the first game props. I think it did the lore in one of the most interesting ways, where as soon as you fought a monster, you were able to purchase a guidebook on them. Now, I complained how you couldn't do this until afterwards. You didn't know what they were weak to or anything. But so you buy this guidebook, which is basically the same thing we got now for free. You don't have to pay for it. But and I mean in-game currency, not real money. You buy these little like pamphlets, and they've got like these monster design icons on them, which I love the Monster Hunter icon designs. And they write these like little lore entries, and like they'll sneak in like a hint on like how they're susceptible to this when they're doing that, or watch out for this move, or like they do this in their ecology. I love learning about the ecology, and you know the small monster, not even the small monsters, what are they called? The endemic life that they brought into World, I thought was so interesting because I loved the little creatures and stuff that you saw that you couldn't really interact with in like the backgrounds of all the other Monster Hunter games. I thought that was so cool. So now that like that's a fully living ecosystem, I find so interesting, and I love that, and I feel like that makes the lore and the flavor of the game so much better. So I definitely agree that, I don't know, that's not a criticism. You said it was a criticism.
Well, it's one of those, like, I sound like I'm wanting, like, I want more lore, but I
yeah,
mean,
where do I get this lore? Yes, okay. So
some of my favorite things in like video games is finding the lore.
That is, I agree. So, you know what? Maybe we do need that episode on where do we get all this Monster Hunter lore? Where is it coming from? Because, boy, there is a lot of it. But if you just played the games, you probably wouldn't even know. So, anyway, I guess that's something we will have to shelve for later. But for now, thank you all for tuning in for this episode of Hitbox. If you enjoy the show, you can help us keep it alive by supporting us on Patreon with the links in the show notes and video's description. For those of you on YouTube, remember to like the video and subscribe for more, and be sure to let us know what you thought of the show and what other topics you'd like to hear us cover in the future. Special thanks to our editor, Rowan, our Monster Hunter lore guy, by the way, and our coordinator, Jaime, our backup dancer / shady maintenance guy, Jeremy, and of course to our amazing Patreon members. See ya! Matt?
Oh, sorry. I'm so used to being quiet when you get done with a video.
Say bye so we can splice it in, damn it.
Bye.